Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into the details to uncover what really matters. And
Mhm.
today we're diving headfirst into
Yeah,
a tragic helicopter crash in Houston this past Sunday night.
right.
You sent us a stack of articles wanting to go beyond the headlines, and trust me,
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack here.
It's one of those stories that grabs your attention.
Oh yeah.
But to really understand it, we need to look at the specifics, the eyewitness reports, and even some intriguing details about that radio tower.
Okay, so let's set the scene.
Okay.
We're talking about a helicopter, 4 passengers, including a child, and a radio tower in Houston's Second Ward.
Right.
Tragically, the helicopter crashed into the tower, causing a massive fire.
Right.
No one survived.
And it could have been even worse.
Oh, wow.
One article mentioned a nearby gas tank
Yeah.
that, had the explosion reached it, would have made the whole thing exponentially more devastating.
It makes you shudder to think,
Yeah.
when I first read these articles, what really got to me were the eyewitness accounts. It's like reading something out of a movie, but this was all too real.
Those firsthand perspectives are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
We have Manuel Arciniega saying he saw the tower crumble right in front of him.
Oh, wow.
And then there's Sam El Sadi, who was actually having dinner at a nearby restaurant and watched the whole thing flame out and completely crumble.
It's hard to even imagine witnessing something like that.
And then you have Liam Coughlin, who described the falling debris as a fireball.
Right.
Gives you a real sense of the force involved.
Definitely paints a chilling picture.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second and talk about the helicopter itself.
Right.
So what do we know about it?
Well, the reports indicate it was a Robinson R-44.
Oh,
This is a pretty popular model, often used for private flights and tours.
okay.
It took off from Ellington Airport, about 15 miles from the crash site. But here's the thing. Its intended destination is still a mystery.
Really?
Yeah.
That's strange. Does that make the investigation more difficult?
It definitely adds another layer for investigators to untangle.
Right.
They'll be looking into whether it was a scheduled flight or if it was operating under, say, a private tour arrangement.
Okay.
In fact, one article mentioned a city council member speculating on social media that the helicopter might have been part of a private tour operation.
Hold on. A private tour. So not a commercial flight. That
Right.
definitely adds a whole other dimension to this. You start to wonder about the regulations surrounding those kinds of flights.
Exactly. And speaking of regulations and safety protocols, we have to talk about the radio tower itself.
Right.
It was obviously struck by the helicopter, leading to the collapse and that devastating fire.
Right. And we can't forget that FAA notice, the one issued just days before the crash.
You're referring to the notice that stated some of the tower's lights were out.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is the timing that close to the crash. It makes you wonder, what, if any, role did those malfunctioning lights play?
It's a critical question, and I'm sure it's one the FAA and the NTSB, that's the National Transportation Safety Board, will be looking into very closely.
Right.
It's like trying to piece together a puzzle in the dark.
Right.
You have these potential clues, the faulty lights, the unknown flight plan, the possibility of a private tour, and the investigators need to figure out how they all fit together.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
those lights being out could have played a role in such a tragic event. Makes you wonder about the inspection processes for these towers,
Right.
How often are they checked? Who's responsible?
It's a good question. It highlights a broader point. This crash wasn't just a singular event. It points to the complex systems we have in place.
Right.
The regulations, the maintenance, the human element.
Right.
All these things have to work together flawlessly to ensure safety.
It's easy to take those systems for granted,
It is.
especially in aviation where things usually run so smoothly.
Right.
We don't often think about the potential consequences when something goes wrong.
Which is exactly why investigations like this are so crucial.
Right.
The FAA and NTSB will be looking at everything, the wreckage, the flight data, witness testimonies to figure out not just what happened, but why.
It's like a forensic investigation, but for the sky. And speaking of flight data, one source mentioned the helicopter's flight plan was unknown.
Right.
Does that make their job even harder?
It definitely adds another layer of complexity. Flight plans are like a roadmap. They tell us where the helicopter was supposed to go, at what altitude, and if there was any communication with air traffic control.
Right.
Without that, investigators have to rely more heavily on things like radar data, if any is available, and any physical evidence they can recover.
Which is where those eyewitness accounts become even more important, right? Like filling in the gaps of a story.
Precisely. Every detail, no matter how small, could be crucial.
Right.
Did anyone see the helicopter in those final moments? Did it seem like the pilot was struggling to control it? Those observations could help investigators paint a clearer picture of what led to the crash.
Okay, so while it's easy to speculate, we have to let the experts do their work and wait for the official findings.
Of course, yeah.
But it makes you think, even if they determine the cause, can we ever truly prevent tragedies like this from happening?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a question with no easy answers. We can implement stricter regulations, improve technology, and enhance training, but there's always an element of risk, a human factor we can't entirely eliminate.
And it's crucial to remember that behind all of this, the investigations, the speculation, there are real people,
Right.
families who've lost loved ones.
Absolutely.
It's a sobering reminder of the human cost of these events.
You're absolutely right. As we delve into the technicalities and try to understand the how and the why, it's important to approach it with sensitivity and remember those who are grieving.
It's a heavy thought for sure. But I think that's what makes these deep dives so important. It's not just about understanding the news, it's about grappling with the bigger questions, the what ifs and the implications for all of us.
Couldn't agree more. Every tragedy, in a way, is a learning opportunity. We analyze, we investigate, and hopefully we find ways to make things safer to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
And sometimes those improvements come from unexpected places. One article mentioned how drone technology is being used more and more for inspections, things like checking those radio tower lights we talked about. It makes you wonder, could that have made a difference here?
It's certainly possible. Drones offer a level of detail and access that traditional inspections might miss. They can get into tighter spaces, provide real-time data, and potentially spot those small issues before they become major problems.
It's like having an extra set of eyes, but in the sky. And that kind of technological advancement, that's something that could have implications beyond just aviation, right?
Absolutely. Think about infrastructure inspections in general, bridge maintenance, even things like wind turbine checks. The potential is huge. And as these technologies continue to evolve, they could significantly impact how we approach safety and risk management in a whole range of industries.
It's almost like a silver lining, isn't it? Finding ways to innovate and improve even in the face of tragedy. So if our listener is still with us, taking this all in, what do you hope they take away from this deep dive?
I hope they come away with a deeper understanding of just how complex these systems are. Aviation safety isn't just about pilots, it's about the aircraft, the infrastructure, the regulations, the weather, and yes, even things like radio tower lighting. It's a web of interconnected factors that all have to work in sync.
It reminds us that sometimes the smallest details can have the biggest impact, and that understanding those details, asking those tough questions, that's what helps us learn and grow both individually and as a society.
Well said. Because at the end of the day, it's about striving for a safer world, one deep dive at a time.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the complexities of this tragedy and the ongoing quest for safer skies. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.